Coming up on The Bright Side, the doctor wooed to the country by a song. A conservation canine called Fonzie. The people who hope they've found a solution to homelessness. And a century-old turtle held back into the water. Hi, I'm Sabra Lane. Welcome to The Bright Side, where all the news isn't bad. Here's an amazing story of ingenuity from the town of Temora. Have you heard of it? It's about 400 kilometres from Sydney and has a population of about 5,000 people. And like so many regional areas, it's struggled to find doctors. So some very clever locals embarked on what they called a great quack quest and crafted this rather catchy video. If you'll pardon the pun, it's an infectious tune and perhaps that was part of their thinking. And guess what? It worked. British doctor Shiraz Mumtaz asked his online community for ideas about where he could live and work in Australia. He told us among the hundreds of messages he received, one friend sent him that Temora video.
And I clicked it and it was absolutely hilarious. I just thought it was the funniest thing. And it just made me look more into Temora. It seems to be really difficult to attract doctors to rural areas in Australia. I can't understand why. I'm an outsider. I trained in the UK, I trained in London, and it's a big, fat, huge city. And I've always wanted to work in a community. I wanted to work with people who I actually get to see again and I get to know.
And while the family waited for Australia's borders to reopen again so they could start their new life in Australia, Dr. Shiraz's daughter played that song over and over again.
All she's been doing is singing the song and learning the dance moves. And she's got like a little bingo crib sheet where she's crossing off all the people she saw in the video in town. So she's met about half of them so far.
Everybody knows your name. Do you know what the place is called? It's called Temora. It's called Temora.
Now let's talk about weeds. If you're a gardener like me, they're the bane of your weekend life. This story is about weeds and a very special dog.
This is Fonzie, aka the Fonz. He's a sniffer dog, but he doesn't work with police. Fonz has been trained to find invasive weeds.
It's not as easy as you might think training a dog to identify plants. Fonzie's trainer says he is 1 in a million. He relishes the hunt and has the drive to keep going.
Fonz can identify weeds as small as this, and with interest in conservation canines growing, more dogs like Fonz are identifying not just weeds, but endangered species.
Nice work, buddy. Yes!
They make great ambassadors too.
A weed like orange hawkweed or serrated tussock aren't really that exciting for a lot of people, but you add a dimension of a dog and it gets people's interest.
It certainly does. Good on you, Fonz. I'm not sure that my Bobby has got the skills to do that. He's more into chasing seagulls and low-flying lapwings. Now, let's go to Canberra. We're going to meet a singing group. They're called the Alchemy Chorus. The choir gives people with dementia and their carers an opportunity to sing their hearts out and, importantly, to socialise. COVID meant they couldn't get together for months and months, but as you'll see, they're back now and making something very special.
Home among the gum trees, with lots of plum trees.
The choir together as the sound is just fabulous, and the growth of singing like a real choir is fantastic. We just caught up with everyone. We've all missed that contact.
It's been 5 years since Paul was diagnosed officially. The first couple of years Paul was quite stable, but this last year has been harder, short-term memory especially going.
Well, I think we've had a pretty wonderful life so far, although I'm probably a burden on Marlene a bit, because I forget things so much. The singing is one way to do something together and really enjoy it.
Brian Treglone, who set up the chorus, knew that music could have a positive effect on the brain, but he also wanted to give carers an opportunity to meet other carers.
The benefits that the partners accrue from the choir are enormous. They just love it because when your partner has dementia, your whole life changes. You tend to reduce your social contacts, or they're reduced for you, unfortunately. But when they come here, they know that they're amongst friends and people who have a common purpose. So it's far more than just a singing group for people with dementia.
Donald Shield from ABC Canberra set up that story, and he says it was a really special experience.
Yeah, I was very touched by how they let me into their lives, even for just a brief moment, and I hope that comes across in the story, that real deep human element to the bittersweetness, I guess, of getting older and how you deal and cope with it in the end, and the role community can play in it.
Thanks, Donald. Now, the turtle you're about to see has been swimming in the ocean off Darwin since about the 1920s, so that's about 100 years. It's mind-blowing just how long they live. Luckily for Old Man Turtle, wildlife rangers found him when he really needed their help.
The flatback turtle, known as Old Man, returning home to Kenby Sea country.
So stoked that we can come back out here and release him into his natural habitat.
Thought to be about 100 years old, Old Man was spotted late last year. A bird had perched on top of him and they could see he was struggling.
The turtle, like he would usually dive under, but he couldn't. He kept floating on top of the water, so that's when we realised that something was wrong.
He was very unwell, so we're so happy to be at this point right now.
The team jumped in the ocean and hauled the 75-kilogram turtle out of the water, and the rangers rushed him to the vet.
They don't know exactly what caused Old Man Turtle's intestinal problems, but he was very sick. He spent 5 months in a tank, fed by a tube, not even lifting his head.
Male flatbacks like Old Man never usually leave the ocean once they make it there as youngsters.
I think he's going to be so happy to be back in his world.
Now, apparently, Old Man paused for just a moment after his release. He raised his head before diving off into the waters. Now, have you thought that homelessness was too big a problem to solve ever? Well, there's a program in Melbourne, it's based on an American scheme, which says it's come up with a solution. See what you think.
This is St Kilda, one of Melbourne's most recognisable suburbs. Famed for its beach, its pubs and cafes, its cake shops, Luna Park. But it's got its fair share of inner city problems, perhaps the most difficult being homelessness.
So there is this myth that homelessness is unsolvable, that it's always going to be there, that it always has been there, and we just don't believe that.
Homelessness doesn't really need to exist. It's a creation of public policy, and it's something that we can solve by public policy.
The main approach is to train people in their local communities to identify who the rough sleepers are.
Can you imagine living in a community that has solved homelessness?
The key to this new approach is to list every single person experiencing homelessness in an area on a centralised record called a by name list. They might come across someone like Shane. Until a year ago, he was sleeping rough.
Shane's now got a new home, and that's all thanks to 16 separate agencies now working together.
What we're doing here is that the service system as a whole takes responsibility and says, right, we are going to keep working with you until you get into housing. That's the big difference.
They keep checking on the people too to make sure they're okay, and during the first year of operation, that program in Port Phillip reduced homelessness by 20 to 30%. That's great stuff. Did you know that 1 in 3 Australian women experience childbirth trauma? Thankfully, there are a number of ways to reduce its prevalence, like this particular program in Queensland. It's having a lot of success. Let's take a look.
Hi, my name's Rachel McGee. I'm a journalist with the ABC in Queensland. I recently spent some time in the city of Logan where I heard about a maternity program that's improving pregnancy outcomes for vulnerable women.
It was really just such a different experience and just made me really love having and wanting more babies.
Transport, cultural and social issues can be barriers to good antenatal care. These hubs offer free parking, they're close to transport, and women get to know their midwives.
We have 5 kids. We've had 3 with doctors and nurses at the hospital, and 2 we've had at the Pacifica hub. With my first child, which was 6 years ago, I didn't actually get to have a midwife because I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes. And so with the second one, because I had that previously, I also didn't get a midwife as well. After we had our 3rd child, we got introduced to the Pacifica hub where we met Kate. And yeah, we've had her the last 2 years.
I just love working here. It's a privilege to have this space and to be able to look after women in this way.
Stargazing is something that fascinates all of us. Jesse Stout's a young Victorian guy and he's had the fascination and mystery of astronomy for years. Back in 2018, he suffered a workplace accident and his family that year bought him a telescope. But the problem is, it caused him pain every time he used it. Now, 4 years on, he's found a place that's been designed with people like him in mind.
This new telescope we've specially built so that you can sit down and look at the night sky.
With around 12% of Astronomical Society members having some sort of disability, the organisation wanted to open the skies to more people. This All Abilities Observatory at the Leon Mao Dark Sky site near Heathcote, north of Melbourne, gives special access to some high-tech deep space tools.
The star of the show, pun intended, is this telescope. Now, it can be adjusted to suit the viewer rather than the user having to manoeuvre themselves around it.
Here is the axis, so everything moves along where my eye level is going to be. Unfortunately, with generic telescopes, you can get a diagonal piece, so it goes up like that. But I'd be looking through it, so I'd have to look down into it, so that stops me from actually being able to use it properly.
The sky belongs to everyone, and those with mobility issues shouldn't be prevented from coming up and seeing stars under these conditions that we get to see and we get to experience.
It's fantastic being able to see Jesse do what he loves again. That's it for this edition of The Bright Side. Remember, you can subscribe, and until next time, we're going to leave you with that catchy song and dance number from tomorrow. See you next time.